You have no idea what you've just done." The words cut through the phone line like ice, delivered by a woman whose voice could freeze blood. Hannah Brooks stood in her supervisor's office, holding a damaged package that would topple a billion-dollar empire, and she had no idea that her next words would change everything. "Ma'am, I understand this is important, but if the package is damaged, I can't sign it off. It's company policy." The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the threat that would have made most people crumble. "If it's not in his hands within 20 minutes, you won't need to worry about your conscience because you won't have a job." But Hannah Brooks was not most people. She was just a shy girl who believed that doing the right thing mattered even when no one was watching. Especially when powerful people were watching. This is the story of how one act of integrity rippled through the halls of power, how a single brave choice unraveled years of deception. Sometimes courage comes from the unlikeliest places, like a shy girl with a delivery van who refused to take the easy way out, and became the key to unlocking secrets the powerful fought to bury. Picture a crisp Tuesday morning in downtown Philadelphia. The air smells of coffee, ambition, and exhaust as the city buzzes with purpose. Bankers, entrepreneurs, and everyday workers fill the streets chasing deals and deadlines. Amid the glass towers and high-stakes meetings, a simple delivery van becomes an unexpected symbol of quiet heroism, a reminder that true courage doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it just shows up and does the right thing. Hannah Brooks was the kind of person people overlooked quiet, observant kind to a fault. At 23, she had a perfect memory, a heart tuned to the needs of others, and an unwavering sense of right and wrong. Raised by a single mom who worked 2 jobs and lived by a simple rule, do what's right, especially when it's hard, Hannah grew up choosing integrity over ease. In her 8 months at Swift Send, she'd built a quiet reputation. While others rushed deliveries, Hannah memorized every route, followed every rule, and treated each package with care. "There goes the shy girl again," her co-worker Dylan would tease like she's delivering crown jewels. That Tuesday morning, Hannah parked her van in front of the towering Centricon building, 40 stories of glass and steel home to powerful people and guarded secrets. Her delivery was marked confidential, hand delivery only addressed to Lucas Harlan, the reclusive tech mogul behind Centricon's billion-dollar empire. But something was wrong. The envelope's corner was crushed, the seam split, and clumsily taped. It violated Swift Send's clear rule: no damaged packages delivered, no matter who the client was. Standing in Centricon's marble lobby surrounded by polished shoes and sharper ambitions, Hannah hesitated. It would be so easy to deliver it anyway. No one would know. No one but her. Then she heard her mother's voice in her head. "Integrity isn't about what others see. It's about what you can live with." So Hannah turned back. Quietly, firmly, she walked out, package in hand, unaware that this small act of conscience would set off a chain reaction far bigger than she ever imagined. Stay with us, because Hannah's decision is only the beginning. The Swift Send depot smelled of cardboard diesel fuel and the accumulated dreams of 1,000 deliveries. It was a place where working-class heroes wore brown uniforms instead of capes, where ordinary people performed small miracles of logistics every single day. But today, the familiar space felt charged with tension. Dylan Pierce, the depot supervisor, was a man whose dreams had been slowly ground down by years of corporate bureaucracy. At 42, with thinning hair and a permanent scowl, he had learned to measure success, not by excellence, but by the absence of complaints. When Hannah walked through his office door explaining why she had returned the Centricon package, his face flushed red with the kind of anger that comes from fear. "It's just a package. Hannah, he said, his voice rising with each word. "You're not paid to think. You're paid to drive from point A to point B and put packages in people's hands. That's it. Period. End of story." Hannah stood before his desk, her hands clasped in front of her, her voice soft but unwavering. "Dylan, I understand you're frustrated, but the package was damaged. Section 12 clearly states—" "I don't want to hear about Section 12. Dylan slammed his hand on the desk, causing coffee to slosh from his mug. "I want to hear about happy customers and 0 complaints, and keeping my job for another day. Do you understand that?" "I do understand," Hannah replied, her voice growing quieter as his grew louder. "But if it's damaged, I can't sign it off. It's company policy. It's the right thing to do." Dylan stared at her as if she had spoken in a foreign language. In his world, the right thing was whatever kept the phone from ringing with angry clients. "Hannah, you're a nice girl, but nice doesn't pay the bills. Nice doesn't keep the lights on. Nice doesn't—" The phone rang, cutting through his tirade like a blade. The caller ID showed Centricon, urgent. Dylan's face went pale as he answered. "Swift send. This is Dylan." "Yes, I understand." "No, she's right here." "Yes, sir. I'll put her on immediately." He held out the phone to Hannah with shaking hands. "It's for you." The voice that came through the receiver was sharp, precise, and cold as winter steel. Fiona Hale, executive assistant to Lucas Harlan, spoke with the authority of someone who had never been told no. "Miss Brooks, I understand you have decided to play games with a very important delivery." Hannah felt her heart begin to race, but her voice remained steady. "Ma'am, the package was damaged. I couldn't in good conscience." Conscience, Fiona's laugh was like breaking glass. "Mr. Harlan is expecting that package. He has meetings scheduled, decisions pending, millions of dollars hanging in the balance. If it's not in his hands within 20 minutes, you won't need to worry about your conscience because you won't have a job." The threat hung in the air like smoke from a fire, acrid and choking. Hannah could feel Dylan's eyes boring into her, could sense the weight of expectations, the pressure to simply give in and do what was expedient. But somewhere deep inside her, in the place where her mother's lessons lived, she found strength. "Ma'am, I understand this is important, but if the package is damaged, I can't sign it off. It's company policy." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Fiona's voice came back, each word dripping with venom. "You have no idea what you've just done." The line went dead. Hannah handed the phone back to Dylan, whose face had gone from red to gray to a sickly green. "Hannah," he whispered, "do you have any idea who these people are? Do you understand what you've just cost us?" "I understand that doing the right thing sometimes costs us something," Hannah replied. "But doing the wrong thing costs us everything." The package was sealed and placed in the depot's secure storage area. Hannah completed her other deliveries that day, in a haze, knowing with each stop that she was probably making her last rounds as a Swift Send employee. That evening, as she sat in her small apartment, a cozy space filled with books, plants, and photographs of family, Hannah felt strangely at peace. Her phone had rung 17 times with calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Her email inbox was flooded with messages marked "Urgent and immediate response required." But for the first time in months, she slept deeply, the sleep of someone whose conscience was clear. She didn't know that 66-year-old Bill Carter, the warehouse supervisor who was just 3 weeks from retirement, had also stayed late that evening. She didn't know that he had watched her throughout the crisis with growing admiration. And she certainly didn't know that he was about to discover something that would change everything. Bill Carter had worked in logistics for 42 years, long enough to develop what his wife called the sight and ability to sense when something wasn't quite right. He had seen companies rise and fall, watched good people get crushed by bad systems, and learned to recognize the signs of trouble long before they became obvious to others. But he had also learned to recognize character, and he saw something special in Hannah that others missed. "That shy girl's got more backbone than half the executives I've met," he had told his wife just the week before. "She does what's right, because it's right, not because someone's watching." That evening, as he made his final rounds through the secure storage area, something nagged at him about the Centricon package. It wasn't just the political drama that surrounded it, although that was certainly unusual. It was something more subtle, something that whispered to his experienced eye that this was more than just another case of corporate impatience. As he picked up the package to relocate it to a more secure shelf, the shipping label shifted slightly, revealing something that made his blood run cold. Beneath the printed label that read, "From Fiona Hale, Executive Assistant," was handwriting in blue ink, L.H. Lucas Harlan. Bill's hands began to tremble as the implications washed over him. In 4 decades of handling packages, he had never seen anything like this. Why would a man send a package to himself? Why would he disguise the origin? And why would his own assistant be so desperate to make sure it was delivered without question? The next morning dawned gray and drizzling, the kind of October day that seemed to match the heaviness in the air. Bill found Hannah in the employee parking lot, sitting in her car, with her hands wrapped around a travel mug of coffee, staring at the depot, like someone saying goodbye to an old friend. "Morning, sweetheart," he said, tapping gently on her window. Hannah rolled it down, offering him the same warm smile that had endeared her to everyone in the depot. "Hi, Bill. I guess you heard about yesterday." "I heard. And I've been thinking." He glanced around to make sure they weren't being observed, then leaned closer. "Can I ask you something? What do you think it means when a man sends a package to himself?" Hannah's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. "What do you mean?" "The package you returned yesterday. It's not from his assistant. It's from Lucas Harlan himself. I saw the original addressing underneath the label." The pieces of a puzzle began clicking into place in Hannah's mind. She remembered something from the day before, a man with salt and pepper hair and intelligent eyes who had been standing near the elevators in the Centricon lobby. She had assumed he was just another executive, but he had been watching her with unusual intensity. "Bill," she said slowly, "what if he needed someone else to deliver it? Someone who couldn't be traced back to him?" Bill nodded gravely. "That's what I'm thinking, too. And that means whatever's in that package, it's something he doesn't want his own people to know about." They sat in contemplative silence for a moment, the weight of discovery settling between them like fog. Finally, Hannah spoke. "What do? We do what we've always done, honey. We follow protocol, and we watch each other's backs. But Hannah..." Bill's voice carried the weight of 42 years of corporate experience. "Be very careful. When powerful people start sending secret messages to themselves, it usually means someone's about to fall very hard." As if summoned by his words, Dylan Pierce burst through the depot doors, his face flushed and his tie askew. "Hannah, get in here now." The storm was about to break, and Hannah Brooks, a young woman who had simply wanted to do her job with integrity, was about to find herself at the center of something much larger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The letter arrived by certified mail, its official Centricon letterhead seeming to mock Hannah from her small kitchen table. Her hands shook as she read the formal complaint filed by Fiona Hale, each word carefully crafted to paint her as insubordinate, unreliable, and unfit for her position. Willful disregard for client instructions. Failure to follow direct orders. Demonstrated inability to prioritize customer satisfaction. The phrases blurred together as tears she refused to shed, burned behind her eyes. Hannah had been suspended, pending a full internal investigation. Her modest salary was gone, her benefits suspended, her future uncertain. Sitting in her apartment that evening, surrounded by the bills she couldn't pay, and the dreams that seemed suddenly fragile, Hannah felt the weight of her choices. Had she been naive? Had she sacrificed her livelihood for a principle that nobody else seemed to value? The chime of her computer cut through her spiral of doubt. A new email had arrived from an address she didn't recognize, loyalfriend47@securemail.net. The subject line was simple, but chilling evidence. But not safe in servers. Hannah's finger hovered over the delete button. Every instinct told her this was dangerous territory, that opening this email would pull her deeper into something she didn't understand. But another voice, the voice of a young woman who had built her life on truth and integrity, whispered that some doors once opened were meant to be walked through. She clicked. The email contained no words, just a video file attachment. With trembling hands, Hannah downloaded it and pressed play. The footage was grainy, clearly from a security camera positioned high in the corner of what appeared to be an elegant conference room. The timestamp showed it was from 6 months earlier. Seated around a polished mahogany table were 6 men in expensive suits, their faces bearing the particular confidence that comes from wielding enormous power. At the head of the table stood Lucas Harlan. "Gentlemen," his voice was clear despite the distance, "we have a problem. A very serious problem." One of the men, a heavy-set individual with silver hair, leaned back in his chair. "Lucas, you're being dramatic. Every company has irregularities. It's the cost of doing business. Irregularities." Lucas's voice sharpened like a blade. "Is that what we're calling it? Fraudulent contracts worth hundreds of millions, bribes to city officials, cover-ups of safety violations that put thousands of people at risk." Hannah felt her breath catch in her throat. She was watching something she was never meant to see, hearing words that could destroy careers and topple empires. Another man spoke, his voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "Lucas, think about what you're saying. Think about what you're risking. This affects all of us. Your reputation, your family's legacy, the thousands of people who work for this company. That's exactly why it needs to stop." Lucas reached into his jacket and pulled out a small USB drive, holding it up like a weapon. "Everything is on here. Every transaction, every email, every piece of evidence that proves what this company has become under your guidance." The room erupted in angry voices, but Lucas continued his words, cutting through the chaos like truth through lies. "I built Centricon to protect people, not to exploit them. I created this company to be a force for good in the world, not a machine for generating profit at any cost." Hannah watched, mesmerized, as Lucas dropped the USB drive into a small manila package, the same package that now sat in the Swift Send Depot's secure storage. "I'm sending this through external channels," Lucas continued, his voice steady, despite the fury of the men around him. "If anything happens to me, if this evidence disappears, there are people who will make sure the truth comes out. The FBI, the SEC, every journalist who's been waiting for a chance to expose corporate corruption." The silver-haired man stood up, his face red with rage. "You're making a terrible mistake, Lucas. A mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life." "Maybe," Lucas replied calmly, "but it will be a short life lived with integrity, rather than a long one lived with shame." The video ended, leaving Hannah staring at a black screen with her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Suddenly, everything made sense. The urgency of Fiona's calls, the pressure to deliver without questions, the desperate need to get the package into Lucas's hands without anyone else examining it. Lucas Harlan wasn't trying to hide evidence of corruption. He was trying to expose it. And he had chosen to trust a simple delivery driver, a young woman known for her integrity, to be the one person in the chain who couldn't be bought, threatened, or compromised. Hannah sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had stumbled into. She thought of all the powerful people who must be searching for that package, all the careers and fortunes that hung in the balance, all the innocent employees who would be affected when the truth came out. But mostly she thought of Lucas Harlan, a man who had chosen to risk everything rather than be complicit in corruption. A man who had placed his faith in the integrity of strangers because he had lost faith in the loyalty of friends. Dawn came with the sound of multiple vehicles pulling into the Swift Send parking lot. Hannah, who had barely slept after viewing the video, watched from her bedroom window as black SUVs with tinted windows surrounded the depot. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bill, "Don't come in today. Something big is happening." But Hannah was already dressed and in her car. Whatever storm was about to break, she wasn't going to face it by hiding. The scene at Swift Send was unlike anything in the depot's 30-year history. Lucas Harlan himself stood in the center of the loading dock, flanked by 2 FBI agents in crisp suits and serious expressions. Employees clustered in small groups, whispering and pointing their faces reflecting confusion and fear. Dylan Pierce was nowhere to be seen. Hannah later learned he had called in sick and was at that very moment consulting with his lawyer. But Fiona Hale was very much present, her usually perfect composure cracking as she spoke in rapid, hushed tones into her phone. "Where's the girl who returned the package?" Lucas asked, his voice carrying easily across the depot, despite its measured tone. Several employees pointed toward Hannah, who had just walked through the main entrance. As she approached, she could see Lucas Harlan clearly for the first time, the same salt-and-pepper hair, the same intelligent eyes she had glimpsed in the Centricon lobby. But up close, she could see something else, the weight of someone who had discovered terrible truths about people he had trusted. Fiona stepped forward, her voice high and defensive. "Mr. Harlan, I can explain everything. This employee violated direct orders, caused unnecessary delays, put the entire operation at risk." "Stop." Lucas held up a hand, and Fiona's words died in her throat. "Agent Morrison, would you please read Ms. Hale her rights?" The color drained from Fiona's face as one of the FBI agents approached her with handcuffs. "Mr. Harlan, you don't understand. I was following your instructions. I was protecting the company." "You were protecting criminals," Lucas said quietly. "And now you're going to face the consequences." As Fiona was led away, Lucas turned his attention to Hannah. "Miss Brooks, could I speak with you privately?" They walked to a small conference room adjacent to the main depot floor. Through the windows, Hannah could see the controlled chaos of an FBI operation in progress, agents cataloging evidence, employees being interviewed, the normal rhythm of the depot completely disrupted. "I owe you an explanation," Lucas began, settling into a chair across from her. "And more than that, I owe you an apology. 6 months ago, I discovered that my own board of directors had been using Centricon as a front for money laundering, bribery, and fraud. Everything I had built, everything I believed in, had been corrupted from within." His voice carried the pain of betrayal, the exhaustion of someone who had fought a lonely battle for truth. "I spent weeks documenting everything, gathering evidence, building an airtight case. But I knew that if I went through normal channels, if I tried to work within the system, the evidence would disappear, and I would probably disappear with it. So I contacted federal investigators and worked with them to develop a plan." Hannah began to understand. "So you sent the evidence to yourself through external channels." "Exactly. But I needed to test the system first. I needed to see if there was still anyone in this world who would do the right thing without knowing the reward, who would follow protocol, even when it was difficult, even when it cost them something." Lucas smiled for the first time since she had met him. I had been watching Swift Send for months, studying the drivers looking for someone with unshakable integrity. Your supervisor kept calling you that shy girl who's too honest for her own good. That's exactly what I was looking for. You? You were testing me. I needed to know I could trust someone. I needed to see proof that there were still people who couldn't be bought, threatened, or compromised. The FBI needed to know that when we executed our plan, there would be at least one person in the chain who would do the right thing even under pressure. People like you. Hannah felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had unknowingly participated in. But I almost lost my job. I was suspended, investigated, and that's why I'm here personally with federal agents to make sure the truth comes out completely. Lucas reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Director of Ethical Logistics. It's a new position I'm creating as part of Centricon's complete restructuring. We'll start you as a senior consultant. While you complete your business ethics certification, the company will pay for your education. The eventual salary will be $150,000 a year, plus benefits, plus the satisfaction of knowing you're building something clean from the ground up. Hannah stared at the card, her hands shaking slightly. I don't understand. I spent months looking for someone I could trust with the most important delivery of my life. Everyone told me I was crazy to think that shy girl from the delivery service could handle something this important. But they were wrong. You proved that character matters more than credentials, that integrity matters more than experience. Through the conference room windows, Hannah could see Bill Carter being interviewed by FBI agents. He caught her eye and gave her a subtle thumbs up, his weathered face beaming with pride. The package will be opened by federal investigators this afternoon, Lucas continued. Along with 23 others, I sent through various channels over the past 6 months. You see, Hannah, sometimes the only way to clean house is to tear down the walls. But you need to know there's at least one person who will help you build something better. Hannah looked at the business card, then at Lucas Harlan, a man who had risked everything to do what was right. She thought of her mother's words, of the choices that define us, of the small acts of integrity that can change the world. Mr. Harlan, she said, her voice steady and clear, when do I start? The auditorium of the Philadelphia Convention Center was filled to capacity with executives, government officials, ethics, professionals, and journalists from around the world. The annual conference on corporate responsibility had become the premier gathering for business leaders committed to doing well by doing good. At the podium stood Hannah Brooks, no longer the nervous delivery driver who had once been afraid to speak up in a depot break room. Wearing a crisp navy suit and speaking with the confidence of someone who had found her true calling, she commanded the attention of every person in the room. The shy girl who had once worried about disappointing her supervisor had become a powerful voice for corporate integrity. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying clearly to the back rows. A year and a half ago, I thought I was just returning a damaged package. I thought I was following a simple company policy, doing what I was trained to do. Turns out, I was delivering the truth that would expose one of the largest corporate fraud schemes in Pennsylvania history. A murmur ran through the audience. The Centricon scandal had made international headlines, resulting in dozens of arrests, hundreds of millions in recovered funds, and a complete transformation of corporate oversight practices. The lesson I learned, Hannah continued, is that integrity isn't about the size of your decision. It's about consistency. It's about developing the habit of doing what's right when it's easy, so you'll have the strength to do what's right when it's hard. She paused, scanning the faces in the audience, faces that reflected engagement, inspiration, hope. Every single day, in ways both large and small, we make choices that define who we are. We choose between convenience and conscience, between what's easy and what's right, between what benefits us and what benefits everyone. And while those choices might seem insignificant in the moment, they create the character that will guide us when the truly important decisions arrive. In the fifth row, she spotted a familiar face. Lucas Harlan sat with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had risked everything to do what was right and had found others willing to join him in that fight. The past year had been difficult: congressional hearings, legal proceedings, the challenge of rebuilding a company's culture from the ground up, but they had done it together. I think about all the delivery drivers, the warehouse workers, the administrative assistants, the security guards, all the people who see what others choose not to see, who know things that others choose not to know. We are the ones who make the system work, and that means we have the power to make sure it works honestly. Near the back of the auditorium, she spotted another familiar face. Bill Carter, who had postponed his retirement to help build Centricon's new ethical logistics division, was beaming with pride. His weathered hands were the first to begin applauding as Hannah reached the crescendo of her speech. Someone once told me that you never know when one small act of honesty will be the key that unlocks a door that powerful people have been desperately trying to keep closed. I believed that then, and I believe it even more strongly now. Hannah's voice grew stronger, more passionate, as she neared her conclusion. Because here's what I've learned in the years since that damaged package changed my life. Corruption isn't sustained by grand gestures of evil. It's sustained by thousands of small compromises, by people who look the other way, by systems that reward convenience over conscience. But it's also true that honesty doesn't require grand gestures of heroism. It just requires ordinary people deciding one choice at a time to do the right thing. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Sometimes the smallest person making the smallest choice can change the entire game. Not because they're trying to be a hero, not because they want fame or recognition or reward, simply because they refuse to be anything less than honest. She thought of the young woman she had been just 18 months ago, afraid and uncertain, but holding fast to her principles, not knowing that those principles would be tested in ways she never could have imagined. The shy girl who had once hidden behind company policies had discovered that sometimes those policies were the very shields that protected truth from corruption. I stand before you today not as someone who set out to expose corruption or reform corporate America. I stand before you as someone who simply tried to do her job well, who followed the rules even when it was inconvenient, who chose integrity over expedience on a Tuesday morning in October. I was just a delivery driver who believed that damaged packages shouldn't be delivered, not because I was trying to be a hero, but because that's what the manual said to do. Hannah paused, looking out at the sea of faces that represented the future of ethical business practice. Hannah smiled, feeling the warmth of purpose that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And if that can lead to all of this, to justice served, to systems reformed, to truth revealed, then imagine what your small act of integrity might accomplish. Imagine what door your honesty might unlock. Imagine what truth your courage might reveal. The applause was thunderous and sustained a wave of appreciation that seemed to lift Hannah off her feet. But she barely heard it. She was thinking about all the other quiet heroes out there, the people who choose integrity over convenience, truth over comfort, doing right over doing easy. The people who might never know how much their small acts of courage matter. But they do matter. They always have, and they always will. As Hannah stepped away from the podium, she felt a profound sense of completion. The scared young delivery driver who had worried about losing her job was gone, replaced by a woman who understood that some things are worth more than security. Some principles are worth more than paychecks, and some truths are worth more than comfort. The package had been delivered, the truth had been revealed, and the world in ways both small and large had been changed for the better. If Hannah's story touched you, Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We all face moments where we have to choose between what's easy and what's right. Hannah chose what was right, and it changed everything. She proved that sometimes the quietest voice holds the greatest power. Hit like if you believe integrity still matters, and that ordinary people can do extraordinary things just by staying true to their values. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of courage, character, and the quiet heroes who change the world one honest choice at a time.